Mr. Fox is quite well known on this street. He belongs to the kind of people with abilities, who are willing to help the poor by lending them money to get through difficult times. Of course, he is not purely a good person. He also requires the poor to give him a kind return, perhaps even more than the principal. But overall, he is a good person, maybe, perhaps, probably. In an underground office, Rich met Mr. Fox, a gentleman who appeared to be in his 30s or 40s. He was wearing this year's most popular dark grey suit with red and blue dots, and a red and blue silk scarf tied around his collar, which was somewhat informal but also very elegant. Before Rich arrived here, Mr. Fox had heard from his subordinates about Rick's unusual qualities, such as the words he had said before, which made him curious. "Aren't you afraid of me?" He had his subordinate press Rich into the chair opposite the desk. "There are few people on this street who are not afraid of me." Rich showed no signs of fear, and this scene was nothing to him. He shrugged his shoulders and asked in return, "Mr. Fox, would you harm me?" This question immediately stunned Mr. Fox. He thought for a moment and then shook his head. "I generally don't actively harm anyone, but if you do something unfriendly first, harming others for no reason is a very foolish thing for anyone to do. It will first damage one's own image, and secondly, such purposeless actions will attract the attention of the investigation bureau. Most people are seeking money, not trouble, and Mr. Fox is no exception." "That's right, so why should I be afraid?" Rick's calm expression and smile made Mr. Fox momentarily puzzled. He glanced at his assistant, and then refocused on Rick's face. "But my people say that you have been watching me these past few days. Maybe you can tell me why. Are you an agent of the investigation bureau?" Before they came, they had already searched Rick's body, and found nothing that could prove his identity. Moreover, with the way he was dressed, which did not match the style of the investigation bureau, Mr. Fox did not believe he was an investigator. This was also what intrigued him. This kid had been watching his business, the laundry, for some time now, and he had also found out about this kid's identity. Out of curiosity and caution, this scene unfolded. He really wanted to know what Rich was up to. He picked up the notebook from Rick's pocket, flipped through a few pages, but couldn't understand anything. He asked his college-educated assistant, who also didn't recognize what the characters on the pages represented.
The warm smile on Rich's face made Mr. Fox feel a little uncomfortable. It felt like he didn't know how to describe it, as if he was being cared for. "Well, Mr. Fox, it's like this. I noticed the business of the laundry store, and some of your minor troubles, and since I believe you have already investigated me, and know the problems I am facing now." Rich pointed to the ceiling, using a small gesture to catch Mr. Fox's attention, and regain control of the conversation. "You're right. Poverty." Mr. Fox nodded and emphasized, "Poverty." Rich pointed at the ceiling, making a small gesture to catch Mr. Fox's attention and regain control of the conversation, then explained, "That's why I need to quickly overcome my financial crisis. I want to do a little business with you." In an instant, everyone in the office burst into laughter. Mr. Fox, his assistant, and two tough-looking men couldn't stop laughing. Rich looked at Mr. Fox without embarrassment and waited until they had laughed for about 30 seconds before they stopped. Then he asked, "This is not a joke?" Mr. Fox smiled again and asked, "But I don't think we have any business to do between us." His laughter naturally stopped as he furrowed his brows and asked, "Do you want to borrow money?" Rich shook his head. "No, do business, Mr. Fox." Mr. Fox had laughed enough, but his curiosity and thirst for knowledge as a human being made him continue the conversation, at least until he knew the answer or lost interest. He wouldn't stop this interesting conversation. "So, what kind of business do you want to do with me?" Rich, as always, had a confident and sunny smile that easily made people have a good impression of him. "I can provide more spare change, nickels, dimes, quarters, and 50-cent coins, both old and new." Mr. Fox's expression suddenly changed, and there was something chilling in his slightly narrowed eyes. If one had to interpret what that gaze meant, it must be murderous intent. "Do you know what I'm doing?" He couldn't help but take out a cigarette and light it. "You have a lot of guts." Rich was not moved at all. "I'm not afraid of being poor. Why would I be afraid of anything else?" The two stared at each other for a moment. It seemed that this guy named Rich was indeed a bold person, and his words also made Mr. Fox start to become truly interested. Some industries have gray areas, such as the financial company he currently operates, which is not completely legal. Not only is the Bureau of Investigation keeping an eye on him, but even the Federal Tax Bureau is also watching him. He needs to reasonably and legally pay taxes on the money he has in hand, but without attracting too much attention. The laundromat is a good channel for this. No one cares where every coin comes from, and they can't figure out where those coins come from. In the entire Bailey Federation,
Almost all laundromats are controlled by these people, but they also have a problem: they are too slow. The middle class and the upper class have their own washing machines, and they don't need to send their clothes to the street to be washed. Only the poor would do that. But the poor often accumulate a week's worth of clothes before coming to wash, and they have to wash them all at once. For this reason, people like Mr. Fox have created a new fee structure, charging by the pound, but this is still insignificant. You can't force everyone to come and wash their clothes every day. Doing so will only attract the attention of the Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Tax Bureau, which is Mr. Fox's biggest pain. Even though the safe is filled with money, he can't spend it, and that feeling is simply terrible. Now, the bastard in front of him says he can solve this problem, which immediately piques Mr. Fox's interest. How do you plan to do it? Rich didn't hide anything and said his method. He couldn't hide it, and neither his current status nor position could stop Mr. Fox from finding out. It's better to just say it, and show his sincerity. I will collect a large number of coins, to sell to you in exchange for a portion of the fee, and my income will be the difference. Mr. Fox glanced at his assistant again. After whispering to him for a while, he frowned and asked, "How much do you want?" Rick's enthusiastic smile made Mr. Fox feel that strange and inexplicable feeling of being cared for again. 10%. Are you crazy? Mr. Fox couldn't help but exclaim, "I'd rather wait patiently." He couldn't accept the price of 10%. When the amount of the transaction was $1, it was just 10 cents. But when the amount of the transaction was $100,000 or $1 million, it was a number that could make people feel distressed. Rich didn't immediately negotiate with him, but raised a new question. "Mr. Fox, do you have the Trading Post here?" The Trading Post is one of the largest newspapers published by the Bailey Federation. It covers all 17 states of the Federation as well as all regions, focusing on national and international financial and economic trends, as well as local financial and economic changes. In a series of confrontations, Mr. Fox gradually lost the initiative. He glanced at his assistant, who nodded, indicating that there was something here. Although their business was not exactly appropriate, their work was indeed closely related to finance. "Give me an early version and the latest one. I'll show you who the real winner of our deal is." With a firm and confident voice, Rick's expression made Mr. Fox start to believe, reminiscent of the time when Rich held a microphone and spoke in front of a large crowd. People looked at him, believed what he said was true, and finally put money in his pocket and thanked him.